The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Oh, hey, we're trying something new today, or at least efforting, and we're hoping it's working. We welcome you in Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410, Wing AM in Dayton. This is Off the Bench. Justin Kinner with you here, of course, back in the studio. You have Jacob Tissett behind the producer board. Jacob, good morning. How are you? We coming through okay? Everything working fine?
Good morning. I think we're okay. I think we're all good. It was a little bit of a rocky morning, but hey, I'm doing things Casey hasn't ever done before, so look at that.
We're trying new stuff, and you're not alone there in the studio. You got your tag team partner, tag team champions, of course, Mr. Elliot Rearing. Good morning. How are you, buddy?
Wow, I'm good. It's good to be here. It's an honor. It's an honor to see you on the television screen, Kinner. You look really handsome today. I like that one little stripe you got in your background there. Was that a strategic stripe, or what was going on with that when you guys painted that one?
So we have, thanks to our friends at, we can't do free ads, but there's
no free ads, please. Please.
Yeah, no company here in town I endorse. And of course, we had this old Band-Aid gross-looking wallpaper in here, and I said, no, we got to do something different at my office here. So they went ahead and they put the Buckeye stripe in. There you go, Office of Champions. I mean, a decade since a championship, but Office of Champions right there.
It looks like a good stripe. I'll tell you what. I think we should get whatever company that was, and we should put a little stripe in this office. A little Bengal stripe, maybe. I think that would look really good.
Would I look good with the Bengal stripe behind me?
You would look great with it. Truly, I thought it looks like a brown stripe, not really a Buckeye stripe from this angle, though.
All right. Well, it is. But I do enjoy the Buckeye stripe. But, no, we got a lot to get into today. We do have some Reds we'll dive into. We got a buy or sell, that a lot of NFL stuff that we'll jump into as well coming up around the corner. And then someone asked me yesterday on my show, they're like, Kenner, you really can't honestly think the Browns still made the right decision going for Deshaun Watson. The answer might surprise you. So we'll get to that debate coming up here in a bit. But we're gonna try Elliot's headlines as we kick things off here today. But let's get rolling. It's time for Elliot's headlines.
Elliot loves three things: Joey Votto, David Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
Good job, Jacob. That was good.
There we go.
That was good. Okay, so don't have a ton of headlines, but I got a couple. Phillies, they lose to the Mets yet again. The Mets have taken the lead in the series. 2-1 they lead. They won 7-2 last night. Our good friend Jesse Winker hit one to the upper deck. They also had a Pete Alonso home run. It was easy, smooth sailing as Shamanaya, 3 hits, 6 strikeouts, 1 earned run. On the other side of the ball, the Phillies, the Aaron Nola, 5 innings, 5 hits, 4 earned runs, 8 strikeouts. So that is that for that game. And on the other side, we have the Dodgers and the Padres. I don't know if you guys have seen the Padres atmosphere for these playoff games. It's
unbelievable.
It's the coolest thing I think I've ever seen. I don't know who's responsible for it. I don't know if it just started. I don't know when it happened. But the Padres have the most electric playoff atmosphere, and it's not remotely close.
Oh, yeah.
So good for them. They win last night 6-5 over the Dodgers. They scored 6 runs in the second inning, and that's all they needed. Teoscar Hernandez tried his best. He hit a grand slam. Wasn't enough. Walker Buehler got rocked. 5 innings, 7 hits, 6 earned runs. On the Padres side of the ball, Michael King, 5 innings, 5 hits, 5 earned runs. Both starting pitchers got a little bit roughed up. But the bullpen for the Padres was nails. Lights out. Robert Suarez comes in for the save. 1 1/3 innings there. So those are your baseball headlines. Moving on to
some stats from that Padres game. I always got some back pocket stats I can rip for these games, and these are some good ones. Fernando Tatis of the Padres has hit 4 home runs in 5 games this postseason, and he has not struck out once. The only other player in MLB history to have a 4+ home run and no strikeout streak across 5 games is Lou Gehrig in the 1928 to 1932 postseason.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. Historic run for Tatis, and that's not quite it. The Padres retired 16 consecutive Dodgers batters following the Teoscar Hernandez Grand Slam. That's the most consecutive batters retired in a game immediately after giving up a Grand Slam in MLB history.
Woo!
Oh, yeah.
How about that? The NHL season, I believe, started last night.
It did.
Can you believe that?
I was at the bar for dinner with my mother, and we looked up at the TV, and they had NHL puck drop premiere night over playoff baseball, and I wasn't even mad about it because I was so shocked that NHL was already back.
I didn't know it until this morning. I don't know if it's just I'm not a hockey guy or what, but I had no clue they started their season, so I have some scores here. The Hockey Club.
Let's go.
That is what they are listed as. They are called the Utah Hockey Club. They win their inaugural game 5-2 over the Blackhawks. It was unbelievable. I think Bedard had 2 assists. Wasn't enough. The Hockey Club scores 5 goals and wins the game. The Panthers beat the Bruins 6-4, and the Kraken fall to the Blues 3-2. Going to the NFL, we have, I believe this is the case, Derek Carr is going to be out indefinitely now. We kind of talked about it yesterday, but it is an oblique injury, and there is no timetable for his return to help save the New Orleans Saints.
They did say that not necessarily Jake Haener taking that starting job. They said
Really?
Spencer Rattler will be involved in an open quarterback competition. So that would certainly be fun to see Spencer Rattler thrown in there.
Oh, boy. And finally, we have the Jets owner has come out and said it was his decision alone. Nobody helped him in that decision. It was just him who decided to fire Robert Salah. That was not how I say Salah. How do you say Robert Salah?
Salah?
How did Kinner say it?
Kinner?
It's Robert Salah.
Robert Salah.
Robert Salah. There we go. Another interesting nugget about that is that story continues to develop. People are just kind of connecting dots. It was leaked that Robert Salah was planning on removing play calling duties from Nathaniel Hackett. And if you're a drug-addicted shadow GM that spends your summers in Egypt and you hear that your best friend
Allegedly
is going to lose his job as the play caller, do you maybe make a call to the owner and say, hey, let's get rid of this head coach?
I think you do.
I don't know. Just connecting some dots here, but it seems like shadow GM Aaron Rodgers might have pulled some strings here.
I like that. But those are your headlines.
You talked about that atmosphere for that playoff game, obviously for the Padres. Like the Reds, we've seen them host a playoff game before. Like, what do you think after this last decade that's just been absolute hell? Like, what do you think that moment will be like the next time the Reds host a playoff game? And we hope it's very soon. We'll talk some Reds coming up. But Terry Francona coming to town, obviously the expectation is win the division, get to the playoffs, be playing deep into October. What do you got? Like, what is that moment going to be like in Cincinnati when they finally get to host that playoff game?
I mean, we're a bad team that's been a borderline joke of an organization for 40 years, and opening day is the best in the country.
It is.
So what do we think the playoffs are going to be? I think if we just watch the MLB playoffs and raise it by about 5-10%, whatever the best atmosphere we see is, that's what's going to be for the Reds, especially if they have a chance to win or are like favored in the series or something like that. I think it might be a little different if, they eke out of the wild card and they're playing I guess it doesn't matter because all those 1 and 2 seeds keep losing. So who knows? But yeah, I think when playoffs get back to Cincinnati, these Reds fans are going to come out of the woodwork, and it's going to be even bigger and better than opening day, which is already one of the best baseball days in a certain stadium in the entire country.
It's a once-in-a-generation event, so everybody's going to be there. They're going to be loud. It's going to be a big party. I can't wait for it. I hope it's going to happen eventually. I'm not going to say I hope it's going to happen eventually because that's the way the world works. Eventually, every team makes the playoffs. The Reds will make the postseason within the next couple of years. You can book that. I'll bet my reputation on it. And when that happens, I will be there, and I will be very, very loud. I don't know if it will be as good as the Padres atmosphere. I'm going to be honest, though. I don't know how anybody tops that. I really don't. I wasn't able to go to the last playoff series at home against the Giants. I wasn't able to do that.
12 years ago today.
12 years ago today. But everything that I was told from my family, it was an electric atmosphere. It just didn't work for the Reds, unfortunately. And by the way, could you imagine winning 2 on the road and then losing 3 at home? What a horrible, horrible situation. But that's the Reds, baby.
Can you imagine what off the bench would have been like during that little stretch?
Yeah, that would have been great.
That would have been tough. The Buster Posey home run would have destroyed us all.
Yeah, it would have been a couple somber shows. I feel like maybe a lot of funeral music and all that good stuff. Yeah, it would have been a couple dead men in this studio. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it would have been. Honestly, I don't even know if you could come to work after that.
Yeah, we've taken a couple days off.
I remember watching it. I told the story before, but I was at my house watching it, and I remember being a kid, and I was on the floor. I laid on the floor, and that was it. There was a couple other details of that game too. Every little outfield ball that the Reds hit was somehow robbed in center field. I don't know who it was out there. I forget that center fielder's name, but I feel like he had 6 diving catches in that. Him and Hunter Pence. So
I remember Pence.
Who was the center fielder? Somebody in the chat's got Angel Pagan. That's who it was. But yeah, that was insane. Hopefully the Reds will be back. We'll get home field advantage again. That's what I want.
That'd be nice.
So you don't think that you don't think Great American Ballpark will be as electric or loud after everything we've dealt with this last decade? And obviously there's been a lot of losing, even the last home game that you said 12 years ago to today, the last time they hosted one. I was watching the atmosphere. I was just watching the clips of that. And you could feel the energy there for the Padres fans. And I can't imagine. We've seen how great the atmosphere is for these Bengals games, these big primetime games, the playoff games. I just feel like it's going to be different when the Reds make the playoffs with Terry Francona, because I think there's just going to be a different vibe when they get there. It's where in the if they made the playoffs with a David Bell or something, it just feels like, well, this is cool just to be in the postseason, but what are our chances? I think it's going to feel different if they get there with Terry Francona leading the way, of course, and you're led by Elly de la Cruz. I think that crowd's going to be electric. This fan base has been through hell for the last decade and some change. I think it could top what we saw in San Diego. I really do. I think it would be phenomenal to see the next Reds home game. I can't wait for that in the postseason. But
I would want.
Hopefully, we don't have to wait long.
Well, I want it to be like that. But I'm going to tell you right now, Justin, I was at those games towards the end of last season when they were very much in the playoff race, and nobody was showing up to games. So that's my only rebuttal, is that who shows up. It's going to be a sellout, obviously. It's a playoff game. But the Padres, they sell out every game. So the Cubs sell out every game. The Phillies sell out every game. Mets sell out every game. Sellout's probably a harsh word there because they probably don't sell out every single game. But they show up to a lot of them. They pack those houses for a lot of them, and it just hasn't happened really a ton at GABP. So, but I want it to happen. I think it will happen, hopefully within the next 2 years.
So the Reds are wasting no time in taking advantage of this Terry Francona hype, and his welcome to Cincinnati, of course. I just get this email a few moments ago. It says, join the 2025 lineup today. New manager Terry Francona is already geared up for the 25 season, and you can be a part of the excitement now with the Reds season ticket membership. Wasting no time. And of course, it's a picture of Terry Francona kind of leaning over the barrier just outside the dugouts. But yeah, they're wasting no time. Terry Francona urging you to be a Reds season ticket holder. Will you be a Reds season ticket holder next year, Elliot?
No, I will not. But here's the thing.
That's the spirit.
Well, here's the thing, Justin. I go to 20 games a year, so it honestly probably makes sense for me to get the season tickets.
Brother, I'm a 20-game season ticket holder.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's perfect.
So that's what I should just do then. I'll get to. How much
saves a lot of money.
How much does it cost?
It's not that much.
Okay, so I'll go buy season tickets then because of Terry Francona. But if they lose next year, I will be throwing away my season tickets.
That seems fair. Yeah, no, I am a season ticket holder. I have the 20-game package, and this is the most excited I've been to be a season ticket holder in a while. I think people are actually hopping on the bandwagon, getting excited about the Reds. It felt like that was starting to happen a little bit over the offseason with national media guys like Ben Verlander and other guys like that were picking the Reds to not just compete for the playoffs, but to win the Central. And now we know the Brewers won it with about 90 wins, so they expected the Reds to be a pretty dang good ball club, and that obviously didn't come to fruition, but we still have a lot of those pieces. And last night in the Fall League, I don't want to be Fall League box score watching, but Matt McClain doubling a home run. Don't look that? Now.
Who was pitching to him? Me?
I don't know. Let us have some fun.
All right.
That's the spirit, Elliot. By the way, ticket plans, they start as low as 13 games. And the Red season ticket members enjoy all the best perks and benefits, including opening day and postseason tickets, but pre-sale opportunities for the 2025 what is the Savannah Bananas game. How about that? We never even touched on that. The Savannah Bananas coming to Great American Ballpark. And you get pre-sale access.
I saw that news, and I will not be going to that one.
I might go. That sounds fun.
The Savannah Bananas is where I draw the line. That's where I draw the line.
What's wrong with the Savannah Bananas?
What's wrong with that? Fun?
They're disgracing the great game. They're disgracing the great game of baseball. That's silly.
Do you hate the Harlem Globetrotters as well?
No. What they do is somehow better.
Aren't you a Harlem Globetrotter, Kenner?
You are a Harlem Globetrotter.
I am an alum. I am an alum.
Big time.
I'm 4 points.
Special K.
2 or 3. 2 or 3. Just saying. The video highlights will be shared at some point. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. If you're just joining us, we welcome you in Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Friend of the show, Charlie Goldsmith, Cincinnati Enquirer, he put out some Reds notes yesterday on Chatterbox. They called it, a gold bomb yesterday, a little Goldsmith bomb yesterday. He dropped some big notes coming out of that press conference, of course, and conversations he's had with his sources about some changes coming already with Terry Francona leading the way. A couple coaches have already been fired. A plan is already in place for superstar Elly Cruz. Matt McClain is open to some versatility use, of course. We're going to talk about Jonathan India. There's a lot of changes already that have been announced for this Reds organization, and Terry Francona was just named the official manager on Monday. We'll get to all of that when we come back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearing with you here on a Wednesday. I'm doing the show remote. I know some of you are angry. You're like, damn it, Kinner, if you can't come in, just take the day off. You could have been a clown-free Wednesday. Well, I've never been about giving people what they want, so here I am. But I appreciate Jacob and Elliot trying something new, doing the show remote, at least for me here today. Well, they're holding the fort down back in the studio. But we welcome you back again, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Guys, look, with Terry Francona just being named the manager on Monday, and he talked about he couldn't wait to get to work. Well, he didn't wait long to get to work. Charlie Goldsmith put out a tweet yesterday highlighting some changes that are already coming to the organization. Terry Francona has wasted no time in making some of these changes. I think we have the tweet to share. We'll pop it up on the screen for those watching on Chatterbox on YouTube. But here's a couple of the changes that are coming. And, of course, we'll dive more in depth on each of these. But no surprise, as we figured, that Terry Francona was going to be bringing in his own guys on the staff, of course, but all 3 hitting coaches have been fired. Joel McKeithen, Terry Bradshaw, and Tim Lamont have all been let go. Budget meetings for the 2025 season are going to be coming up at the end of October, which, of course, that will shape up the offseason. But here's where things get a little interesting. Okay, I don't think any of us could have named Joel McKeithen, Terry Bradshaw, Tim Lamont as hitting coaches for the Reds, right? Like, I don't think any of us could have really named those guys. So that's it's not news, but I mean it's news that those guys got fired. It's not news that the budget meeting's coming up at the end of October. We don't expect a lot of money to be spent anyways, but okay, we know that. Here's where things get interesting though, as far as some of the plans for next year with the guys that are currently on the roster. Matt McClain, which we, of course, know. I mean, all these young guys that have been called up over the last couple of years have been very team-friendly as far as being versatile, as being willing to play whatever position that they need to help this team win. Matt McClain is open to moving around positions, including third base and center field. How about that? Spencer Steer and Jacob's favorite, Jonathan India, will also play some first base and at third. Now, Spencer Steer, that's no surprise. Spencer Steer has played at third. He's played at first. But Jonathan India, obviously not a surprise being willing to play at third. But India at first is kind of interesting as well. We'll touch on that in a moment. Elly Cruz is the shortstop. No more debating there. No more debating that. We don't have to waste our time on that anymore. Jacob is smiling ear to ear, I'm sure. He's not moving anywhere. I mean, yeah, no doubt, right? And Nick Krall, basically said what we all know: the outfield needs to get better. Hot take there by Nick Kroll. And then unfortunate news: Julian Aguilar having Tommy John surgery. So that rounds out some of the big Reds headlines that, of course, Charlie Goldsmith with the Cincinnati Enquirer announced yesterday. There's a lot there. Jake, we'll start with you. What's the biggest takeaway you have? Is it Elly remaining at short, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, obviously? Is it the fact that there's plans for McClain to be a versatile guy and play multiple positions? Or is it the fact that your guy, Jonathan India, that there's plans for him on how they're going to use him next year? That seems to go past the offseason. They have plans for him already, and it doesn't sound like there's plans to move on from him. What's your big takeaway from some of these news notes and headlines from Charlie Goldsmith?
Coupling the Jonathan India first and third news with the Matt McClain's willingness to play center and third, I think we can all just come to the conclusion that Jonathan India is not going anywhere. And wherever that they think the best lineup can come from, which obviously we all know involves Matt McClain and Jonathan India in those 9 players, is going to be on the field. And I think they're just going to figure out the way to best do that. And if that's McClain, if McClain's a better center fielder than India is a first baseman, you'll probably see India playing second. And if India thrives at third, which is the position he played at Florida, then maybe he plays that position, and who knows what happens to Noel V. Marte, and then Matt McClain's at second. I think this is the Reds ownership, and I assume mostly Terry Francona, saying that we don't care about, feelings and all that other stuff. We're going to put 9 guys on the field that give us the best chance to win at the position that gives us the best lineup. And it's reassuring to hear that, even if I'm not a huge Jonathan India guy, as long as you're willing to move him around and play a little bit of Tetris to line everyone up on this team to give us as few holes as possible. That's a great way to attack this offseason and attack free agency, because we all know the Reds aren't going to go sign 3, 4, 5 players. So if you can move some of the guys you already have in the organization around to fill some of the holes that you might have to address in free agency otherwise, I think that's a great way to go about it. I'm really thrilled by most of, if not everything on that list, until you get to, obviously, Julian Aguilar's Tommy John surgery. But, you touched on it when you were reading it. You have every idea of how happy I was to see Elly was staying at shortstop. That's where he belongs. I'm very, very thrilled to see that the organization recognizes how good he's been at that position, and they're going to keep him there. So a lot of good, and then obviously a little bit of bad. Aguilar coupled with Williamson already having Tommy John surgery out for 2025. The Reds have a wealth of starters, so it shouldn't be that big of an issue. Probably do need to address a little bit of depth in free agency, though.
Yeah, for me, it was. The hitting coach is getting fired. That was it. That was the big one for me. 6 big runs in the last 6 games for the Reds. Unfortunately, that was not enough to get the job done for those poor hitting coaches. Listen, I don't know what the role of a hitting coach is. I don't understand those job titles, because it seems like you can try your best to instruct hitting, but if the guys don't hit, I don't know what we can do. And I don't mean to make light of a situation where people get fired from their jobs, but the offense just didn't work this year. So it's good to see. It's good to see some new faces, a new staff being brought in by Terry Francona. The Elly the Elly staying at shortstop thing, wasn't surprised. It was always going to be Elly at shortstop, because if you move him from shortstop, I don't know what you got in the infield. So he is the sole reason that the Cincinnati Reds have a fighting chance next year, and he is why Terry Francona is here. Elly gets to play wherever he wants. If he wants to play it short, play it short. I think he's a very good defender. I think he's a top 10 defender in all of Major League Baseball, despite the errors. So I'm very happy with that. The Matt McClain, I don't want him in center field at all. I don't want him in the outfield ever.
Yeah, let's take a guy that has injury concerns at second base and throw him in center field.
Yeah, listen. I'm out on that. You can miss me with the Matt McClain to the outfield. Let's keep him in a bubble, and let's keep him safe at second base.
He played outfield at UCLA early in his college career, right?
I think so.
I believe so.
So, but here's the thing. I don't want him to get hurt, so don't do that. I recommend anybody else. Put India out there. The rest of those decisions were good. I'm happy with the way the direction of the Reds are going.
And again, if you're just tuning in, it was Charlie Goldsmith who just put out a couple updates. Obviously, I think the ones that interested people the most was the fact Matt McClain open to moving around positions, including third base and center field. I think Matt McClain serves this team best, as you guys talked about, more so in the infield than in the outfield. But I think that, look, if Matt McClain's having to be forced to go play out in the outfield, that means that guys are banged up and that they're just trying to move pieces around just to fit some guys in. Ideally, opening day without even talking about what some offseason moves could be made. I mean, we have Christian Encarnacion Strand at first. I think the question is at third base, second base is who? Jonathan India, Matt McClain. I mean, right now with the talks of Jonathan India being willing to play some outfield as well. Third base and first base or what have you. Jacob, we'll start with you. Like right away, just with the guys that you have on this roster right now, how's that middle infield going to look? Because we always just assume that the way to make this easier, Jonathan India probably going to be on the move. And he very well could be. It's just interesting to hear about plans already for how they're going to use them. I shared with Jacob yesterday that there was one soundbite. I was catching every Francona interview. I know he did the Dan Patrick show. He'd done a couple. And one of the shows, he said he loves Jonathan India. He can't wait to get to work with him. To me, it sounds like that's a Francona guy. So I don't feel like that they're gonna move on from him. But him staying on that roster does create, again, decisions that aren't tough for Francona, obviously, but a decision will have to be made. Him staying, it puts somebody out of position, or it puts somebody in a spot where they're not going to be playing in a comfortable position. How do you think that shakes up the infield, Jake, with the roster set as is, obviously, without free agency already coming into play?
My dream infield hasn't changed one bit since last year. It's still that CES can get healthy and work out at first base. Matt McClain and Elly De La Cruz is the best middle infield in baseball when both are healthy. And then we pray that Noelvi Marte can figure it out in the offseason, in spring training, and all that good stuff, because he was the highest touted prospect through his minor league career. Obviously, Elly, a big jump at the end of his, but Noelvi Marte was a top 30, top 20, top 15 prospect the whole time he was in the Mariners organization. And then as soon as he came over here, this is a guy that had a lot of pressure to be great, a guy that we expected to be a core piece of this team, and obviously he looked terrible this year. But I'm still holding out hope that a guy in his first major league full season is not the end-all be-all of what that product or prospect is going to become. So I'm still holding out hope that that Noelvi is the third baseman, but I think the next logical choice would be to have India start at second, or if he can figure it out at third, and then have Matt McClain playing the other position. I think we saw at shortstop last year, Matt McClain's range and arm is phenomenal. He's a great defender. I have little to no worries about him playing third. I would certainly prefer him at second, but third is much more preferable to me than the outfield. I think Elliot touched on that perfectly with that move and why it would scare us. But, yeah, I think the most likely situation would be India, McClain at second and third, and then Elliot at shortstop, and hopefully CES at first base if he's able to get healthy and figure it out a little bit. Hit last night over 100 miles per hour. I know you guys aren't exit velo guys, but he didn't have a lot of those when he was up with the Reds.
Had a double.
Good signing, or good signs for us.
He had a double. I think Arroyo had a double as well. So
that's right.
Good for the Reds injury guys. They're kind of coming back. So yeah, my dream middle infield is obviously Elly and Matt. I would like, and this is just my opinion, as of right now, I'd like a change at first base for next season. I'm not writing off CES. I just saw the struggles last year, and though it could have been due to injury, but when he was up, he was not good, and that's a fact. I'm not saying you write guys off when they're young, but I wouldn't hate a utility first baseman as well that's had history in the league. I know you don't want to maybe a Paul Goldschmidt type, but an aging first baseman. But I would like somebody there, huh?
Ty France.
I wouldn't hate Ty France being here. I want somebody else. I don't want to just rely on CES because I don't want to sound like I'm bashing CES. I don't want to solely rely on Christian Encarnacion Strand at first base. I'd like there to be an option if things go sour. So I wouldn't hate that. Third base, yeah, it just depends on what Noelvi Marte is. I don't know what Noelvi Marte is anymore, unfortunately. We haven't even mentioned Candelario, which is very
the big time free agency sign,
which is very, very funny. He can't play in the field though, so
it's DH only, right?
He has to be DH.
It's a great OBP for a DH.
That's right. What is he at? 275.
All for lucky.
If he can play serviceable first base, then I guess I'll be okay with that. But if he can't, then I'd like to sign somebody at first base that knows what they're doing and can give us some sort of backbone at that position. Again, not meaning to bash CES. He's very young. All the same sentiments that we said last year regarding all these guys. But he wasn't very good, and I'd like to have an option if things go wrong. I'd like to have a backup. And if Candelario's that option, I'll be fine with that. Candelario's got to be better, and I think that's a name that people are just going to kind of slowly forget about coming into next season. Because you have all the shiny pieces like Matt McClain, Elly De La Cruz, Noel V. Marte. You have TJ Friedel out in center. You still have Spencer Steer, Tyler Stevenson, Jonathan India. You say all these names, then you forget that our highest paid player, Jamir Candelario, he also has to play. And he has to play most games. So I don't know if that'll be DH. I don't know if that'll be infield. At first or third. It can't be third. Actually, it can't be third.
Can't be third.
He's so bad at third base that it's scary. And that's all due respect, of course. So we'll see next year. Well, I think that the big thing, too, is Nick Krall addressed that the outfield was terrible, respectfully. Not good enough is I believe, the words that he used. But if you can get somebody that can hit home runs, I saw Teoscar Hernandez's grand slam last night. Sounds pretty good to me. Yep. If we can get Teoscar here in Cincinnati, I'd love it. I don't know. We got a lot of work to do here with this roster, and I think they're on the right path. It's only it's October 9th. The playoffs are still going on, so I think the Reds will have a fruitful offseason. I think they know what they have to address. I think everybody's on the same page. I think Nick Krall and the Castellinis, they're all on the same page up there in the front office. Brad as well as our GM. So we'll see where we go from here. But I'm excited with the direction that we're taking.
Last thing on this before we wrap it up, on the Reds front. When the season ended, there was a weird report that floated out there that the Reds were really heavily pursuing Sonny Gray. We keep talking about all the changes or things that may stay the same as far as it comes to the, obviously the defensive layout as it comes to the lineup. But as far as pitching, I mean, that's really where, when you think about Cleveland's success during the Terry Francona era, yes, obviously we could talk about the offensive and defensive success, but it really came down to how dominant they were with the arms that they had in their system and what he was able to do with the bullpen in those opener situations. Obviously, they had very good starting pitching, and so does the Reds at this point. Do you guys anticipate any aggressive, maybe Francona type of changeup when it comes to this rotation? I mean, we've talked, of course, we really like, when you look at Hunter Green, you look at Nick Lodolo. Nick Lodolo is one that seems just not to be able to stay healthy. Is there some trick up the sleeve of Francona where all of a sudden you're looking at a Nick Lodolo and saying, hey, maybe you're not a starter? I mean, these are some hot takes. These are some stretches, obviously. But any mix-up in the rotation, do you think, that comes with the addition of Terry Francona leading the way?
I've been calling for an Andrew Abbott trade since basically the deadline this year. So I would love to move one of these guys. I think moving Nick Lodolo and packaging him with someone else, we could get some really, really interesting pieces. So raise the floor of what we'd be able to add to this team. Because like we've said before, after you get through the top few guys in this free agent class, if the Reds swing and miss on, the Santanderes, the Teoscar Hernandez, there's not a whole lot of depth there in the outfield for these free agents. So if you want to attack a guy like we talked about at the deadline, like a Luis Robert, or like someone like that, a younger player with higher upside in the outfield that's already taken care of long-term contract-wise, or at least for the short-term, long-term, in Robert's case, then you're going to have to move one of those guys that's a little bit more proven. And I think Abbott and Lodolo are two key pieces for that. I would certainly not be as shocked now after the Francona hiring if they were to do that, just because I think they could be more aggressive, or at least I expect them to be. So I think that'd certainly be an interesting move. A lot of fans would definitely be mad about it. I wouldn't necessarily, but when it comes to adding a pitcher to this rotation, I'm much more inclined to rely on our young guys and hope these guys work out, like the Rhett Louders, even the Chase Burns of the world that are just now getting into the organization and hopefully coming up very, very soon. I'm willing to rely on those guys instead of going out and getting a Sonny Gray or I saw people throwing out after last night's outing. Remind me the Dodgers pitcher.
Walker Buehler.
Walker Buehler. People throwing out signing Walker Buehler's name because after a bad playoff performance, his price might drop. And something about just going to get bargain older pitchers that have moderately fallen off and hope that we can save their career or at least give them one more chance on a one-year deal. That's not necessarily where I would want to go with the starting rotation, because I do think we have a lot of talent in this organization right now that I would prefer relying on.
I think we've got a lot of pieces there, and I think eventually you have to move somebody. Who's your opening day rotation as of right now if the season started tomorrow? For me, it's Hunter Green 1, it's Nick Lodolo 2, it would be Rhett Lauder 3, yep. It would be Andrew Abbott 4, and I just think that fifth spot should be used for an outside guy.
As of now, it would be Petty, probably.
As of right now, it would be Petty, but here's the thing: where's Graham Ashcraft, right? Is Connor Phillips going to be able to regain the trust that we once had in him? I don't know. And I think if you have all of these guys stacked up, eventually it becomes an overflow. And I think at some point, like this year, you lose all of your starting pitching, and somehow it's still what we had still wasn't enough. I wouldn't hate going out and trading Graham Ashcraft, trading Andrew Abbott, and seeing what we could get for them. I don't know what Graham Ashcraft's price would be. Do you think Graham Ashcraft makes the opening day roster? I don't think he does at this point, unless he agrees to go to the bullpen. But even if he does that, I don't know, because we still don't know where Brandon Williamson's going to be. We don't know anything yet. So there's a lot of mysteries, and I want to try to cut down the mysteries as much as we can, while also giving these young guys a chance to succeed. It's you can't just say like, oh, Noelvi Marte is bad. It's such a small sample size. Certainly he took a knock after last year, but again, they're so young and there's so much time. The issue is our time as Reds fans. It grows impatient by the hour. We grow impatient by the hour, and we try to find winners as much as we can. And I don't want to try to be let's just take 10 years and see how much of these guys can develop. At some point, I want to be in a mix of that and also trying to go out and spend, which they did last year. They went out and they did spend last year. Didn't all work, but they tried. If we can get Nick Martinez back, I'd love that. That'll be a big move, too. That's going to be a move that not a lot of people are going to talk about. You have to get Nick Martinez back some way, somehow. And I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, given how well he pitched as a starter, too. I don't know what his role will be in Major League Baseball if he were to leave here, whether it be starter, reliever, the same type of role. Either way, we'll see what the Reds are next season, but there's a lot of moves coming. There has to be.
All right, Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Ring. Man, I'm losing my voice today. I didn't even realize that until a little bit ago. But, no, we're fighting through. Appreciate you guys. Let me do the show remote today, but the show must go on, and we're continuing on. How about this? When we come back, a key wide receiver on a contending AFC team, and there's not a lot of contending AFC teams right now, but a contending AFC team loses one of their star wide receivers. It'll be interesting to see how this team handles the absence of this individual. We'll talk about who that is when we come back. Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearing. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearing with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. Elliot, I am keeping an eye on the time. I know this will be a shorter segment, so just so you and I are on the same page.
Just making sure.
But we're in good shape. I promise. We're in good shape. But
He has no faith in you, Kenner. No faith.
What? No, we're gonna do what that touch and go thing. You know, is that touch and go?
Yeah. It's a touch and go. That's what those
classic Browns fan.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh
you
no.
You always put your face on camera when you say something. Woo.
Oh,
I mean
no.
Hey, that wasn't anything worse than your Dobby comment yesterday.
Yeah, that's
Elliot.
right.
I said sock, and everybody knows that.
Just to be clear, my wife's a big Harry Potter fan. I showed her that clip, and she looked at me like, how the hell did you know what that was? I'm like, I know what he was referring to, but it's not what it sounded like.
Your
but she was Team Elliot, so she is the only bad decision she made in life was me, I guess. But no, she is a very smart woman, but she was Team Elliot in that,
classic
just so you know.
Joke. That was a classic husband joke.
I mean, I stink.
I saw this, by the way, you teased that wide receiver news. I saw that in the right before you mentioned it. Here's a little nugget for you. I made a trade in fantasy football. Nobody cares about my fantasy team, but I'm going to make this point. I traded that wide receiver away for Rico Dowdle of the Dallas Cowboys and Devontae Adams of the Raiders. So I think I've won that trade.
Well, I have bad news, Devontae Adams.
Well, the talk is the talk is slowed down, is what Adam Schefter reported. But he's still going to be traded,
and he's still faking that hamstring injury.
Correct. For now.
Yeah, bad news.
Yep.
Still have doubt.
Yep. Look, Kirk Herbstreit is just so disappointed that Kirk Herbstreit hates fake injuries more than anybody. Actually, I'm with Kirk on that. That stuff's getting ridiculous in college. We can talk about that in a bit, but my goodness, that's always been. I mean, that's been used more this year than ever before. It's kind of wild, but no, I see people. I see people right away with the Texans, that maybe the Texans get in on the Devontae Adams sweepstakes and all this because of this. I don't think you should overreact at all. Look, I know Nico Collins, again, placed on the IR. He's out at least 4 games with a hamstring issue for the Texans. Nico Collins leads the league with 567 receiving yards. Obviously, a dominating month and some change to start the season. The bottom line is the Houston Texans just need to relax. They need to calm down. They don't need to panic. I think this would be a bigger deal if you didn't just go out and add Stephon Diggs in the offseason. I don't think the Texans need to even look in the direction of a Devontae Adams. I think that this is a very good team. I was high on them coming in. I don't know what the health status of Joe Mixon is. Obviously, when he did play early, he had a big game. I know it was a high usage game where he got a lot of carries, no doubt. But he produced for him. That injury, to me, they need Joe Mixon back. Not more than Nico Collins by any means, but they're more equipped to handle a Nico Collins absence for a bit. Plus, when you look at the AFC right now, the AFC kind of stinks. Outside of the Kansas City Chiefs, who are off to a 5-0 start, and the Ravens, who are off to a 4-1 start, the Texans are 4-1. They're still very good. I don't think they need to panic and overreact to losing Nico Collins. Obviously, we don't care about the Texans, but obviously they need to get him back soon. But when you hear the Texans, that some people are panicking, saying they need to go sniff around Devontae Adams, I don't think that's even a move they even need to consider.
No, I think the Texans are in a great spot when it comes to weapons. I mean, one of my favorite players in my entire time at Alabama, John Mechie, the lead receiver on the 2021 Crimson Tide, has been inactive for the Texans because they have so much wide receiver depth. Tank Dell put up 1,000 yards last year as a rookie or close to it. And then we all know what Stephon Diggs is capable of doing when it comes to, alleviating pressure off a quarterback. 100 catches last year in a season where everyone basically unanimously said he fell off and had a big-time regression, and that's still 100 catches. So he can still play at a very, very high level. I have a lot of faith in Tank Dell, and I have a lot of faith in John Mechie sliding into a bigger role in that offense. Like you said, Mixon coming back is absolutely crucial eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. But Cam Akers has done a serviceable job in that role with Mixon out. So still a decent job there by the offense to power through these injuries. Nico Collins originally listed day-to-day, shifted to week yesterday, and then this morning put on IR. Hopefully that's a sign that he won't be out any longer than the 4 weeks. They thought he could have played this week until yesterday. So hopefully just a little bit more, swelling or a struggle putting weight on his hamstring or running or something along those lines where it will just be a 4-week absence, because as confident as I am in C.J. Stroud and the Texans offense to be fine without Nico Collins, he is crucial to that team. He's one of the best receivers in the league this year, and maybe for the next few years to come. He's been incredible ever since C.J. Stroud got there. So a massive, massive loss, but I think they'll be able to overcome it at least for a few weeks.
I don't think this changes the Texans much really at all. I know they're out Joe Mixon, they're out their best wide receiver. You still have talent there, and I think if you can survive the next couple of weeks, you're going to be fine. The Texans play in one of the worst divisions I've ever seen. No disrespect to the Jaguars, who should be sent to London to play permanently.
Well, they're playing back-to-back.
That's right. So listen, the Texans are going to be fine. If there was ever a team that could have injuries like this happen to them, it's the Texans, and they're going to get through it. I don't think you go out and get Devontae Adams and have Devontae Adams, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, every single wide receiver in the world. That's probably not the play. I think you stay pat with Stephon Diggs and help him lead the way here, and they're going to be fine.
On the Jaguars going to London for back-to-back weeks real quick. Robert Salah fired after the Jets lose in London.
Okay.
Coaches I forget the number off the top of my head. Coaches get fired after losing in London a lot.
Really?
Yes.
That's a stat?
Yes. Doug Peterson certainly on the hot seat back-to-back games in London. Can you fire him after the first game?
No.
You can't.
You
right?
cannot. You have to
give him the
second game.
So what if he wins the second game after an embarrassing loss the first game? Does he save his job? Because then he's not a London loser. He's a London winner when he comes back.
You're right. I don't know. Salah is the third NFL coach who has been fired following a loss in London.
That's big time.
Dennis Allen was fired to a loss to the Dolphins in Wembley in 2014. 2015, Joe Philbin was fired following a loss to the Jets at Wembley.
Doug Peterson saved by the scheduling.
How about that?
Speaking of scheduling, too, for the Texans in the absence of Nico Collins, they got the Patriots. They'll be fine. Packers will be a challenge, no doubt. But then you got the Colts and the Jets. A very favorable 4-game stretch in the absence of Nico Collins. By the way, like the Bengals have a loaded wide receiver room. Obviously, the Texans do. The Seahawks, are those the three best are those the three best wide receiver rooms in football?
You said Seahawks, Bengals, and
the Texans.
And the Texans. I think we're forgetting about the Dolphins just because their quarterbacks hurt. I mean, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
And Odell.
You have Odell as the third. I think that's a pretty good one.
No, you're not including OBJ.
Not allowed?
Stop
Okay.
it. No,
okay.
My God, what the hell's wrong with you guys?
All right.
I'll let you can make fun of the Browns. I'll be patient with the Browns stuff. But I am the biggest OBJ hater in the world because I took so many daggers. I was so jacked when he came to Cleveland. I was talking so much smack, and he let me down like you absolutely wouldn't believe. Everyone blaming Baker Mayfield and all this. I'm like, no, the guy just stinks. He dropped so many passes in that first year in Cleveland. He never returned to form.
Fair enough.
He goes to the Rams, and he has a couple good games, and people couldn't get the fact that, okay, hey, it was the Browns that were the problem, not OBJ. No, he was the number 1 wide receiver in Cleveland. He didn't play like one. Then he goes to the Rams where he's the number 3 wide receiver. So, of course, he's not getting any defensive attention whatsoever. Then he balls out, and everyone tries to blame the Browns for why it didn't work with OBJ. And you know what? Obviously, he was kind of a pain in the ass for the Bengals in that Super Bowl early on, but that was the last time he looked relevant at all. But no, I will not let you put OBJ in that category. But I do like Jalen Waddle, and I do like, obviously, Tyreek Hill. So, yes, the Dolphins still a good weapons room, no doubt.
But Kinner, didn't you see the video Odell's dad posted of Baker missing him on wide open routes?
Well, Baker won this MVP guy that he is in Tampa all of a sudden. But
We put 2 new options in the chat that I think are good. Eagles and Niners as well when healthy. Niners, obviously, Debo, Ayuk, and then Juwan Jennings, and then Jahan Dotson, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith in Philly, 2 elite receiving groups as well.
And don't forget Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy. I mean, two elite guys they lead the league in drops, man. I tell you what. Unbelievable. All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM here in Dayton. And look at that. Look at that. Ending right on the time I needed. And that, Elliot, is a go.
Wow.
Now I'm wasting time here. I need to end it.
A little bit more.
I need to end it. I need to end it. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearing with you here. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Let's do a little buy or sell. I know we got to pay some bills coming up here in a bit. We'll send it to Jacob for that after this part of the show. But let's do a little buy or sell. What?
Before we get to the buy or sell, I saw an interesting proposition by Nick Wright yesterday. I just wanted to walk you through it real quick. Before we get to buy or sell, real quick. So
no, you're fine.
To get the Browns out of this cap misery that they're going to be in real soon, would you trade Deshaun and all of your first-round picks for the next 10 years to a team so they could pay Deshaun Watson instead of you?
10 years?
First of all,
10 years?
That seems dramatic. Evan Cohen on the morning show on ESPN Radio, Unsportsmanlike, had put out a proposition that the Panthers should reach, they're going nowhere fast right now, right? Like they could give a deal. They need draft picks. They have to they have to put that puzzle back together very quickly. They could request a second round and a third round and Deshaun Watson's contract and be willing to pay most of it off, if not all of it off, in exchange for those picks because they desperately need picks as they try to turn it around. They have the money to do it. They're not using the money to compete right now, so it kind of accomplishes a couple things. They're basically going out and buying draft picks. If a team is silly enough and willing to do that, by all means, go right on ahead. I have no problem with that. I just don't think anyone's going to bail the Browns out in this situation. Also, if they do that, it doesn't get the Browns out of jail completely because the cap hit would still exist one way or another as far as that's concerned. But, yes, that is an option. I just don't see teams being willing to bail the Browns out as far as that's concerned.
I don't know. I think you could go maybe look to some of the trash in the NFL. Maybe you go to the let's go to the Jaguars. What do they have to lose, really?
You send Deshaun and 2-1s to Carolina for Bryce.
Oh, that would be good. That's good. There's a way out of this, Kenner. I believe in you guys.
Hey, Elliot, bite me, because the tone in your voice, there's nothing that was, like, innocent about this. This is not, like, contributing at all. Like, it's just,
This was contributing. This was contributing.
No, the Jags have too much money on the books. They're not. They have their own. It's not as bad of a quarterback problem as Cleveland, but they might have their own QB problem.
You could get
right
Trevor
now.
Lawrence in. You could get Trevor Lawrence for Deshaun Watson, straight swap. Lawrence is a renowned champion.
Cleveland technically would win that. As much as I'm not a big Trevor Lawrence guy, Cleveland would win that. So there's that.
Yeah, that's true. All right, sorry I interrupted. Go ahead, back to buy or sell.
You did not interrupt. No, you did not interrupt. Nick Wright talked about it too, but yeah, the Evan Cohen deal, like, yeah, they wouldn't get any, they wouldn't give up any first or anything like that, but like to send a second and a third or multiple, because the Panthers, I think, have like no third and fourth round picks for another year. And that would accomplish that for them. But who knows? Like I said, I don't think anyone is bailing out the Browns in this situation. But off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410, Wingham and Dayton. Let's jump in with a little buy or sell. Buy or sell. I'll throw it out to you guys, and you guys jump in, of course. But a little buy or sell as we sit here on off the bench today. Buy or sell. The Browns and Bengals will both have a new head coach next season. Buy or sell?
Oh, boy. New head coach, I'm going to sell. I'm going to sell because I don't really believe the Bengals would ever fire Zach Taylor. I say it, but I don't actually believe it. The Browns might be a little bit of a different story, but the issue with the Browns is the new head coach would still have to deal with the same issue. So there wouldn't be any problems solved if Stefanski got let go. Zach Taylor, maybe. I would say there's a better chance Taylor goes than Stefanski goes, though, at this very moment. Just because I don't know what a new coach brings you next season for the Browns. It doesn't change anything. Zach Taylor, you have a record-setting offense, and you have a defense that can't play defense. So maybe you look to change that. Again, the Brown family will not fire him. It just won't happen. So I'm going to sell this. But I do think Taylor is more on the hot seat than Stefanski is at this very second.
Yeah, I'm selling it as well. I think Kevin Stefanski's in a very interesting spot because I don't think he's allowed to bench his starting quarterback, and I think he wants to. So I don't know how you can fire the head coach when you're not letting him coach the team the way he wants. So I think Stefanski is probably going to be there through this whole Deshaun Watson ordeal, and then you grade him again on the other side of it and reassess hot seat, cold seat, and all that good stuff with him. He's a 2-time coach of the year. He's done a pretty good job with turning a franchise around and getting him to a point where it's respectable other than the quarterback that he didn't necessarily want. And I think there is a 0% chance the Bengals fire Zach Taylor regardless of how much the fans want it. So I'm selling as well.
Unless they lose out. If they lose out, he's gone.
Lose out, correct.
So again, the buy or sell is the Browns and Bengals will both have a new head coach next season. I'm going to sell that. I'm really questioning if Stefanski's back in Cleveland next year, but not because he gets fired, because he might just say, I'm getting the F out.
That's true.
I think it's kind of one of those things where he can kind of save face in this situation. When word gets out that he's not allowed to change the quarterback, who's leaking that? The Browns side, they're not leaking that. The Browns don't want that to get out that, hey, ownership is forcing Stefanski's hand here. I bet it's Stefanski's team that's leaking that stuff out that, hey, well, everyone's going to point the finger at the head coach and say all of these problems are on you. It could be one of those things where his hands are tied by the front office, obviously, with the ownership as far as that goes. So I'm going to sell it. I don't think that both will be fired. I don't think Zach Taylor should be fired at all. But a 1-4 start, we're anticipating that there will be enough games won that maybe they don't make the playoffs, but they'll at least show that, hey, this offense was elite the entire season. As long as it doesn't unravel, as long as guys don't quit on the team, because you guys talked about it, like how long before the offense starts to sputter because they're hopeless, right? Because the defense is so bad. As long as the team doesn't quit, I don't see Zach Taylor being fired at the end of the season. But if things unravel and Jamar Chase and his personality starts to become a problem, if T. Higgins just shuts it down and says, hey, I was willing to come back and do all this stuff, on this 1-year deal because, we were competing for something. If Hendrickson says, you know what, I'm out too until I get a new deal. there could be a lot of things that happen that unravel this team, so we'll see what ends up happening. But I think Zach Taylor's back. I do not think Stefanski's back, but I don't think Stefanski's fired. I think Stefanski just up and leaves, which would be the most Cleveland thing ever.
One thing to remember as we talk about these coaches in the AFC North on hot seats, and I think we're going to get into it later, but the questions about the Steelers offense and the Ravens not knowing what's going on there with their slow start and blown leads. We're just a few weeks away from AFC North Hard Knocks. So we're going to get an inside look at every single one of these teams. And we've talked here about the Bengals and how we're a little bit worried about Zach Taylor losing this locker room if this thing gets off the rails much more than it already is. Well, we're going to have cameras in the locker room to see just how much he loses it. Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, we're going to see just how much Deshaun Watson is leading in that locker room, how much he's talking to players, what exactly is going on there. I think this Hard Knocks is going to be one of the most interesting Hard Knocks of all time, just because of where these teams are at compared to their expectations preseason, where a lot of these coaches are at in terms of their contract and hot seat, cold seat. I think this is going to be an incredible Hard Knocks during this regular season.
Yeah, Jacob reminded me of this yesterday. I completely forgot it was happening, one, and I still can't believe that it's going to happen, two. It's going to be insane. If the Bengals continue to free fall here, it's going to get bad before it gets good. The offense will tail off. You're going to see frustration. You're already seeing it with Joe Burrow at these press conferences. It can only get worse, or it can only get better, depending on which way you look at it. I'm a glass half empty kind of guy, but to each their own. In the Browns situation, I don't know, man. I don't even know if you can record what goes on in Cleveland, because it's just such a disgrace. And you have all the players not wanting to be there, and you have the coaching staff getting angry. They can't do anything. And you look around, and it's just a big old dumpster. And listen, to each their own. But I respectfully, of course, I cannot wait for the Cleveland stuff that happens on this Hard Knocks. Cannot wait for it.
I just hope we can focus on the Cleveland stuff, and it's not just all the Bengals locker room mutinying.
It has to be. Yeah, it has to be more Cleveland than Bengals, or else I'll have egg on my face.
By the way, and I'm with you, Elly. I forgot all about the Hard Knocks AFC North edition. And by the way, when they announced this, I was like, yeah, the AFC North is a perfect division for this. But we thought it was going to be like four teams battling it out for the top of the division.
Right.
These are four teams. I mean, the Ravens are obviously very good. Obviously, the Steelers, they're good. The Bengals are very, very dominant, one-sided. And then the Browns have just been a dumpster fire. The AFC North is actually way more interesting than we thought, because I don't think any of us anticipated when it was announced about the Hard Knocks that Russell Wilson wouldn't have been healthy for the first month and change of the season. Right? Like, we don't know what the talks are behind the scenes as far as when he's healthy. Is he going to take over as the starter? There's some drama looming there because Mike Tomlin refuses, even with the good start to the season, to name Justin Fields the official starter, right? The Ravens, they've had a couple up and down moments. That Hard Knocks episode that highlights the Bengals-Ravens game, the fallout from that game, the behind-the-scenes preparation for that and after, that's going to be wild. And then all this stuff with Deshaun, the 1-4 start, and then obviously how bad he has been. He's been historically bad. He is the worst quarterback statistically in the National Football League. Yeah, the AFC North I didn't think could get any more interesting back in July, but it's the most interesting division still as we sit here today. So we'll see.
Yeah, no question about it. We thought we were in 4 playoff teams, and now we have 4 teams that are battling for relevance. So, yeah, definitely not what we expected.
How do you think they do that? Is it just going to be like a clip from the Browns for a bit, and then they go now happening in Baltimore, they go to the Ravens for a bit, or is it going to be one team per episode? I don't get how they're going to do this.
That would be my guess. Like, there's a crew at each team, and they're just going to go now in Cincinnati, now in Baltimore, and then kind of bring it together when they play each other. Like, I assume when Bengals-Ravens play and there's no other divisional matchups, like this week's episode would be centered around those 2 teams going into the game and then recapping the game. So I don't really know. This is the first time they've followed an entire division, so there's not really a precedent. There's not a precedent at all for how they're going to do it. So definitely interesting and something I'm really, really excited to see, but for different reasons than I was when it was announced.
Next one up, again, this is buy or sell off the bench here at Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 Wingham or Dayton. If you just jumped in, we just did buy or sell. The Browns and Bengals both will have a new head coach next season. I know a lot of the talk right now is how hot is the seat. And before we go to the next one, by the way, Zach Taylor's seat, is it warm? Is it hot? Has it changed temperature at all? Like, what's the
No.
temp when Zach Taylor sits down? How does his tush feel right now?
Zach Taylor's seat is as cushiony and comfortable as ever. It's not hot. It might even be cold. But now that it's getting a little chillier outside, I'm sure they've added some seat warmers.
Yeah, that's it.
There's no chance in any way that Zach Taylor's going to get fired or is even close to getting fired.
It won't get warm unless they lose the next couple of games here. If they lose to the Giants, and then
players start speaking out.
Correct, and I think that could
Right.
happen. I think you might see
Right.
that. If they lose to the Giants and they lose to the Cleveland Browns, and if they lose these next couple of weeks, he will be, in my opinion, he will be gone. You can't start this season like this. You can't be 1-7. It just can't happen. There's no scenario where Joe Burrow has a 10 touchdown to 1 interception ratio in losses. There's no explanation for it other than half your team just isn't up to par. And we can make some moves on whether it be Lou, whether it be Duke Tobin, whether it be Zach Taylor. It has to be somebody. If they lose to the Giants, it's going to be warm. As of right now, it's not warm because he just always gets the benefit of the doubt. And I think it's been fair. Last season, no Joe Burrow. You missed the playoffs. We can all sit here in Cincinnati and be like, okay, I kind of get that. You lose a game to the Ravens because the holder doesn't bring down a snap. Kind of get it. You play the Washington Commanders, hottest team in the NFC. You play the Kansas City Chiefs, back-to-back Super Bowl champs. You lose. There's only been one loss technically this year that has me pulling my hair out, and that was the beginning of the year. But with the consistent slow starts to each season, with this start particularly 1-4, by the way, this is going to be one of the easier schedules the Bengals will ever play, unless they lose out this year, and then next year's will be.
Yeah, they'll have a fourth place schedule again.
So you got to take advantage of this. You have to. The offense is still there. That's the good news for Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor's an offensive guy. He has Joe Burrow, and the offense scores 35 a game. That's the good news. So we'll see. It's not hot yet. I'm selling that it's hot. I don't even know if that was a buy or sell. Was that even a buy or sell?
It was.
That was a buy or sell. So I'm going to sell the fact that his seat's hot. And I'm going to say it's going to be hot if he loses to the Giants on Sunday Night Football.
One thing I do want to touch on with that is I'm not singling out AJ Worse. I just saw him put it in the chat, and I've seen the sentiment a lot of places on Bengals social media, and it's that, hey, the Jets just moved on from our guy Bob, Coach Bob, since he doesn't like how we say his last name, Coach Bob Salah.
Coach Bob.
That's right. Coach Bob got fired in New York with the Jets, and his defense was top 5 in the league. And he's the defensive head coach. Zach Taylor, a lot of the people that are still defending him are saying, hey, you can't fire him. He's an offensive head coach, and the offense is doing an incredible job. Well, At the end of the day, people are saying, well, just follow the Jets' lead. They're trying to compete right now. They fired their coach. Do we want to follow the Jets' lead?
No.
Are the Jets the best ran organization in the world?
Nope.
How much success have they had over the last decade? So
None.
Before we all jump on the Jets just did it, let's do what they did, take a second and let's think about how the Jets have operated for the last decade plus, because it hasn't been pretty.
If he got fired right now, though, Jacob, and we brought in Mike Vrabel right now, would you be happy with that or not?
I mean, Elliot, come on.
So that's the option though. Like they wouldn't do that.
There has never been an outside hire in the middle of the season. It would be
it wouldn't happen. But I'm just saying it could happen.
It could.
With that, and by the way, and that's a good question. By the way, I hadn't seen that question poised, but that is a good point because that's been my stance. Like Zach Taylor, like let's be a little understanding. Like I could see if they were 1-4 because the defense was good and Joe Burrow and the offense wasn't working out. But like it's his side of the ball. But that is a good point about Robert Salah. But I do want to counter with I don't think it's the same scenario. Robert Salah didn't get fired. I mean, for one, their start is better than the Bengals, and it's still not even good. Let's just be clear. But he got fired because of drama with the quarterback. And I think the one thing that is very key with Zach Taylor is whether we think he's doing a good job, you think he's doing a good job, whether you think that the decisions late in games are good or bad, at the end of the day, the only opinion that matters is that of Joe Burrow's. And I think as long as Joe Burrow has a vote of confidence in Zach Taylor, I don't think he's going anywhere. But I do think one reason Robert Salah was fired 5 games in is because he did not have that relationship with his quarterback. I don't think it's the same scenario, but it is a good point. His side of the ball has been the dominant side, and they still moved on from him as head coach. So I do like that point. I just don't think it's the same scenario nonetheless. All right, this is Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Speaking of the Jets, speaking of Robert Salah, that's a perfect little tease for our next buy or sell. In fact, we'll use that to go into the break. Buy or sell when we come back. Buy or sell that the Cincinnati Bengals need to make Robert Salah their new defensive coordinator. Do you buy that? Do you want to sell it? Do you still like Lou Anarumo? We'll discuss when we come back. More Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Jake, we'll get to after this one. We'll jump into making sure we give all of our great sponsors the love and attention.
No
and the care.
worries.
We will get there, but. We talked about the Jets. They fired Robert Salah, obviously the head coach, and we knew that his side of the ball with the Jets, defensively, one of the best defenses in the league, and that defense playing at such a high level. And the Cincinnati Bengals, the reason that they're losing right now has absolutely zero to do with the offense. The offense has been perfect. The run and the pass, the balance, the MVP caliber of play of Joe Burrow, obviously the superstar contributions of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and the new additions of Moss in the run game. Like, everything is clicking offensively, and they're still 1-4, and they're still in every one of these games. They're not getting blown out, but it's coming down to defenses not being able to get stops. So that becomes the big question about Lou Anarumo's future with the Cincinnati Bengals, where everyone wants to put Zach Taylor on the hot seat. I think the easy solution is, if you got to make a change, you make a change on the side of the ball. That is what is costing you games at this point, which is defense. Buy or sell Robert Salah, the head coach that was just fired by, of course, the New York Jets, the former defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. Buy or sell that the Cincinnati Bengals need to pursue Robert Salah as their new DC.
Sell. Sell. Would I think Robert Salah would be a better defensive coordinator than Lou Anarumo? Sure. I think he's probably the best defensive coordinator in football. But I also don't think Lou Anarumo is why this defense has been bad. If you watched Chatterbox Bengals last night, we brought in a lot of plays, a lot of big chunk plays for that Ravens offense on Sunday, where if the defenders did their job and ran the play that was called, they would have been in position for success. But alas, the Jimmys and Joes are failing the X's and O's. It seems like Lou Anarumo is doing a fine job as defensive coordinator as you go back through and watch the film. But time and time again, on key play after key play, you have two guys drop into the same zone. You have a guy that's supposed to be your number one corner in Cam Taylor-Britt thinking it's zone when it's man, and you have Rashad Bateman running wide open on a crosser. You have Geno Stone filling on a running back screen, leaving Mark Andrews wide open down the sideline. If Lamar Jackson makes a better throw, it's a walk-in, untouched touchdown. At some point, you cannot blame the coach for everything, because he's scheming it up to a point where if these guys just run the plays he's calling, they're going to have success. But whether they're incapable or don't know what the plays are, I don't know what it is, but it's a massive issue. At this point, after getting a little deeper into the film for the last few weeks, I blame the players more than I blame Anarumo. I don't think it's his fault. I don't think that his seat is necessarily as hot as we previously thought either. I'm selling this because I still think Lou Anarumo is a fine defensive coordinator.
I'm going to buy it. The defense hasn't been good for a long time now. I saw this. I like when all these graphs get shared on Twitter. It's the graph with all the logos, and they put you everywhere on the little thing. Since 2021, the Bengals defense is 18th in defensive EPA. They haven't been good maybe ever. I think the one thing the Bengals defense always did in the past was take advantage of turnovers. They'd get turnovers, and it would make you think that, oh yeah, that's a really good defense. Forcing turnovers is certainly important, and it's what a great defense does. But the thing about turnovers is it does go both ways, and I think if the other team makes mistakes and you're just there to capitalize on it, I don't know if that makes you a great defense. And I think that's what they've done for now 3 years. So I think it's time to part ways with Lou. I wish him well, Godspeed, and I am going to buy it. I'm going to buy that Robert Salah right now would be the best active defensive coordinator. and he would make the defense maybe not great this season, but if you were to look in the future, I think the defense would certainly get better.
I would like to buy this, but knowing how the Bengals operate, I don't know how drastic of a change they're going to make. Like, here's the deal with me. If we head into next season with the Bengals head coach Zach Taylor and Lou Anarumo as the defensive coordinator, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I don't think it's the end of the world, because I think we can all agree that, and I think you can say this for most coaches, if you give a coach better players, all of a sudden their defense is better. We've seen Anarumo be able to unite this group in the past and be able to get them to play at a high enough level that obviously was good enough to get them to a Super Bowl. In fact, over the last, I think I looked this up the other day, over the last 7 years, they're the lowest ranked defense to lead a team to a Super Bowl. And, like, I know we've heard the points of others that Joe Burrow wasn't perfect during that run to the Super Bowl. He wasn't. I mean, you look at the way Joe Burrow plays now, that wasn't what he was doing during that run to the Super Bowl. But that defense was big time. That defense, as you talked about, Elliot, forced a lot of turnovers, right? It was a complete team effort to get to that Super Bowl when you look at special teams, defense, and offense, nonetheless. But we've seen in Anarumo, when there's enough weapons there, he can get them to unite to play at a high level, whether it be good scoring defense, a good turnover defense. They just haven't been able to put it all together. And if there was ever a year for that to happen, it should be this year. But we can all agree the front office didn't do their job. We've made it a point that, okay, this team is top 5 in spending on offense, and they're at the bottom in spending on defense. Well, you get what you pay for. I know a lot of times heads will roll for being responsible for your side of the ball, but I think Anarumo is a good defensive coordinator. I think it'd be kind of silly just to move on from him for how bad they've been this year. There's still a lot of season left to be played, and I think if it continues at this pace, he might be gone. But if they bring him back, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But I talked about this yesterday. Look at the energy and vibe and change of a fan base when you make a change as something as simple as a manager in baseball or a coach in football. If you bring in Robert Salah, who was the defensive coordinator for a team like the San Francisco 49ers year in and year out, Super Bowl contender, I think that's going to make a lot of Bengals fans feel warm and fuzzy inside. That you're bringing in a guy that has come from a very good organization in the Niners that's going to bring that experience over. I think that might make fans feel comfortable and feel like they're trending in the right direction, right? Like the Reds were, and I'm using a baseball, go to baseball quick. We were all checked out on the Reds. We all had given up on the Reds. We didn't want to talk Reds or hear about the Reds for a while. You improve the manager, and all of a sudden, look at us. We're talking the same players we said weren't good enough for this team to win last year are now all of a sudden we're talking about how good they're going to be next year because the vibe feels different with the leader on board. And I think that's what Robert Saleh could provide for the defense. The problem is it's just we hear it all the time. That's not a Bengals move. That seems too aggressive of a move for the Bengals to make. I just don't see them doing it. But it wouldn't be the end of the world if they did. This is such a horrible answer. I'm not committing to anything. I think it would be a good move if they did, but I'm fine if they keep Anarumo. That's as diplomatic of an answer as I can give you.
I think that's a fair answer. I certainly wouldn't be mad if they brought in Robert Saleh to coach this defense. I just don't know that anyone will be able to have success with that. Was weird.
That was far worse than anything I did.
No one will be able to have success with the guys on this defense anyway because the guys are just bad. I mean, we talked about the draft with the guys the Bengals have been drafting. Not a single guy was really a highly rated prospect anyway coming out of the draft, and we haven't hit on anyone anyway. So, yeah, I don't know that Robert Saleh, though he would be the best defensive coordinator in the league, I don't know that he'd be a fix for the Bengals.
I have a question, though. Like, if the defense, honestly, if they did have more sacks, how do you think that would help?
I think it would have to help.
Straight faced us after that question too. Look at him.
It would certainly have to help, right?
With that racing stripe behind him.
It's a Buckeye stripe. Don't be disrespectful, Elliot.
It's a racing stripe.
Don't be disrespectful.
Lightning McQueen.
Nonetheless, all right. Continuing on.
Real quick.
Buy or sell. Yep.
Real quick, Kenner. Have you ever been to OTR? Over the Rhine? Never been there?
No.
The chat is currently distracting us with a long discussion about the best food options in OTR.
I disagree with almost every take they're putting out.
I want to make it clear I like the City Bird. That's all I had to. I didn't know if you could tune in this conversation. I just wanted to ask.
Nice free ad.
Free ad.
Yeah, I mean, but I see we're doing a good job of captivating everybody's attention. I mean,
yeah, that's what we are.
Last one here as we wrap this one up. Buy or sell the Bengals being, again, we talked about it. The Bengals aren't an aggressive franchise a lot of times, but desperate times call for desperate measures. If the offense playing the way it is, you would have to think that this front office, you can't just sit back and do nothing, right? With the deadline just weeks away, buy or sell the Bengals front office making a move at the deadline just to add even a little help to this defense.
Here's the thing. They don't do that. So, they haven't done it in the past. So, am I going to sit here and act like they can do it this year? I'm gonna buy the fact that they have to know that something's very, very wrong. Very wrong. I think if you looked back in the past, I don't think there's ever been a situation like this where one side of the ball is so drastically lost. I don't know if that's happened in recent memory. The defense is not competitive, and the offense is the best in the league. If there was ever a time to make one of these in-season moves that they've never done, really, it would be this year. So I'm going to buy the fact that it's a possibility and that they have to know, they have to acknowledge that it's not working right now. They're 1-4, and you have the best offense in the NFL. They have to know something's wrong, and I think they should be actively pursuing some sort of talent that can help or at least make the defense not just trash, you can make them at least semi-bad. They can be bad, they just can't be the worst. And right now they are the worst. The Bengals don't make in-season moves. I'm going to buy the fact that they will right now because they have to. They can't possibly sit back on their hands and say, you know what, we're just going to ride this thing through. We're paying our quarterback $55 million a year, and he's doing his job better than we've ever thought. And right now, we're not competitive in games because of our defense. I can't just sit there and be like, they're going to be okay with that. So I'm going to buy it and say for the first time, they're going to make a move.
Are we buying whether it would make the defense better or if they're going to do it?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to do it, but it's the only thing that could save this season. So I would love for it to happen, but yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's a 0% chance it happens. We put out some of the names the other day. We talked about Jeffrey Simmons. We talked about, Max Crosby potentially on the block. A lot of those big name, Pro Bowl, all-pro guys. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Bengals aren't going to make a move to try to save this season. It's just not how we operate.
Yeah, I think in sports, too, the interesting thing is we always let owners and front offices off the hook. I mean, I know we complained about a lot of front offices. The Reds front office always gets, trashed all the time. But I think when we waste time talking about Zach Taylor's future, when we waste time talking about Inarumo's future, we let Duke Tobin off the hook. We let the Brown family off the hook. You know what I mean? There's a lot, I don't think Inarumo's not doing his job. I think he's doing his job, but I think he's a chef that's been given absolutely crappy ingredients and told to go make a fantastic meal for everybody, and he just can't do it. And I think that at some point when we waste so much time, we let – and by the way, you guys are doing it, I'm doing it, we all do it. We let the Bengals off the hook when we constantly do the whole – well, the Bengals don't operate that way. The Reds front office, there's a lot of things that we could say, well, the Reds don't operate that way, but we continue to bury the Castellinis all the time. We continue to call out Bob Castellini and Phil Castellini. Nick Krall, by the way, has done a fantastic job. He's done a good enough job to get enough players to get to the points where we have expectations for them to win the division and win baseball games. We were disappointed because of how much talent was on this roster that Nick Krall was able to develop and get, and we still bury him. But Duke Tobin, we still give the benefit of the doubt because he had two good drafts back in, 19 and 20 and has been average since then. We continue to let that guy off the hook. We let the front office off the hook way too much for Cincinnati. The only thing I would say to you guys is stop letting them off the hook. I think of all the anger and all the frustrations, it all has to be pointed at them. It started in the offseason, of course, with the mishandling of the Jamar Chase situation. At one point, I even thought I put it all on Jamar Chase, but then you find out that they started the mess. They started the conversation between them. I just think we let that front office off the hook way too damn much. And I think that's why the Reds make changes that they do from time to time. The Bengals just never feel that pressure. At least I don't feel like they do. What do you guys think?
They are who we thought they are, and we let them off the hook. I want the Bengals organization to be a championship-level run organization. And until I see that day happen when you win the championship, I still have the belief that they're going to fall back into the same issues that they've always been. They've always been in the past. They've been known to be cheap. They've been known to be stuck in their ways. And I'd like them to break that mold once. I'd like it to happen. I don't think it will happen, though. And I think that's the area of concern. We have the cheapest ownership in the NFL, and it's not remotely close. And now you're seeing it. So this is they don't make these type of moves. One day, I hope they will. But until you see things happen, it's seeing is believing for me.
I think the thing with this Bengals team that is kind of tough to put the moves that they need to make into perspective here is the only way you can save this defense with one move is if you go get an all-pro level player. Like getting a rotational guy to improve the safety position or something like that with a mid-round pick or a practice squad, a guy that's not playing and trading him. That's not going to work. You're going to have to move a T. Higgins or a first-round pick or something with some serious value in order to get any kind of player that's going to make a meaningful difference with how bad this defense is, really top to bottom right now. So I don't necessarily know that it's even the best situation for the Bengals to make a big-time move because if you're trading a T. Higgins to get one of those players and the offense regresses a little bit and that all-pro player, that single one all-pro player doesn't take to fix this defense, then where are you? Because if the offense isn't scoring 40 points a game, which I don't think they can do without T, and the defense is still going to allow 40, even with this, whoever this player is, I don't know how that's a successful formula. So I don't know that it's necessarily the best move for the Bengals. It is definitely the most exciting, but I think they're in a tough spot regardless.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Hey, by the way, I just saw Kirby Smart went to the David Bell School of Accountability.
Nice.
They've suspended. Colby Young has just been suspended indefinitely, not kicked off the team, not anything. Just, you're going to miss a couple games, by the way.
All right.
So that just came out.
If you want a startling read, the list of accusations came out and the description from the woman about what all happened, and it is a terrible, terrible read. So indefinite suspension is something to say the least.
It's a slap on the wrist, and it's kind of wild nonetheless. But, yeah, that just came out according to On3 Sports. But, all right, we got bills to pay. Jacob and Elliot, we'll touch on some of our ads coming up here in a few, and then we'll close out the radio side when we come back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Ad time. And I just realized I forgot to pull them up, so I'm doing that in real time while I stall right now.
There we
Elliot,
go.
you got like 45 seconds to take the camera.
Okay, so here we go. 45 seconds. Here's my favorite thing about time is that time.
And perfect.
Okay.
I found it. So the Bengals report, which is coming up with another buy or sell here soon, and we just did a few buy or sells.
That's
so
right.
we're in the Bengals report. The Bengals report is proudly sponsored by Encore Technologies. At Encore Technologies, we deliver cutting-edge IT solutions for a data-driven world, from mobile computing and desktop support to advanced data center solutions. We help businesses enhance efficiency and
PRODUCTIVITY.
That's right. That's right.
That was an incredible spelling by me.
Visit Encore.tech, where your path to innovation begins.
Where? There it is.
Oh, right here. It's right here.
Look at the skyline behind you, by the way. Touch the crown. Touch the crown. Oh. Yeah, look at you touch that. Yeah.
Hi, Mom. And next, what a grab!
That was an insane throw. He sidearmed it to me. You ready?
There we go. Pawnee water, best tasting water in the world. It's just water in here. That's why Elliot's able to catch it. If it was full of rocks, the weight would weigh it down. I wouldn't be able to have it.
100%. You're right.
Pawnee water, PAHHNI, water.com. Get your own natural limestone filtration right here in Hamilton, right across the street. I think I've hit all the talking points. What else?
I think that was it.
No rocks.
No rocks. And it's smooth down the gullet.
That's right. Slides right on down there. Pawnee water.
Yeah.
Best tasting water in the world.
That was good.
That's all the ads for today. Running the stinger.
Oh.
Kenner's coming back unless you got something else.
Well, I was just going to say, usually we say like the stream.
That's right.
And then also for box lunch, we'll have a box lunch today.
That's right. 12:15. Let's say 12:15.
12-ish or 12:15, somewhere around there.
We'll shoot for that.
Outside of that, you have a podcast that went out last night. If you want to tune into that, if you missed Chatterbox Bengals, go to our podcast page on anywhere you can listen to podcasts, and go listen to Jacob Tissett and Craig Sandlin talk about the Cincinnati Bengals as they preview the upcoming week against the New York Football Giants. I was gonna say San Francisco Giants.
Baseball on the brain.
Anything else? What can I think of? Anything else?
Drake May's starting.
Oh, Drake May is starting.
We didn't touch on that on the radio.
Okay.
They're gonna kill him.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
They're gonna kill him.
Was it an injury or was it a benching?
No, it was a benching, but they have the worst offensive line in football, and they're playing the Texans, who have one of the best defensive lines in football. I think he actually might die.
Hopefully he doesn't.
I hope not.
I hope he doesn't.
I hope not. Let's get that out there. The official stance of Off the Bench is we hope Drake May lives this weekend.
That's correct.
All right. Glad we got that taken care of. We're going to run this break stinger and bring it on back.
Oh, hi. We are back. That might have been the quickest ad ever. That was the quickest ads ever, and we knocked it out quickly, and we're back on the radio side at least.
That's right.
Not at least. We never left YouTube. We never left Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. But Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearing with you here again. And obviously, Casey McAllister has more PTO than all three of us combined.
I know he's not watching, but because he's fixing his roof. But about 15 minutes ago, I sent him a link if he wants to check in from the roof. I see a lot of people in the chat guessing that he might not actually be working. I am giving him a chance to prove himself, and this is certainly risky for me to do this on the fly because I'm not good at this job.
No. Well, I think you're great at it, actually. I think you're
doing fine.
But we got a call waiting on Casey to check in from the roof if he wants to. I'm going to send him a text here in a second, but that would certainly be fun.
That would be very fun. He gets to see Kinner's racing stripe.
Go Bucks. OH.
Go Bucks. I
I mean, Jacob, do you have a problem with the racing stripe? I mean, you're a Buckeye guy.
Kinner, I love it. I love it. It's the best. It's the best helmet in football. Why wouldn't you have a room decorated like it?
Ka-chow.
Just saying. Just saying. A couple more buy or sells we'll throw out, and then we'll get to – well, we might get to that one. We might push that back to tomorrow. We'll see. But a couple more buy or sells as we sit here right now. We talked about a little bit ago the Steelers, right, with their situation with Justin Fields in that offense. And I don't think Justin Fields has been bad by any means. I don't think, I think that offense is bad. The thing that's interesting about Justin Fields, that guy gets protected a lot as far as how the media covers him. And I'm not against it. It's just like at a certain point when you're this long into your career, it can't always be, oh, you don't have this, you don't have that. In Chicago, he didn't have a coach. He didn't have an offensive line. He didn't have a run game. He didn't have weapons. He didn't have this. He didn't have that. Then you get to Pittsburgh and you have that coach. You have that offensive line. You have that run game. You do have a wide receiver. But you have the defense, one of the best defenses in the NFL. Like at a certain point, it can't always just be the surroundings around you. And if you have to have everything that perfect, you're not a starting quarterback in the National Football League. You're just not. Joe Burrow, we knew very early that he could play at the highest of levels of this league when he gets sacked 70 times and still leads his team to a Super Bowl. You want to talk about a guy that didn't have all the perfect surroundings around him. He found a way to overcome that. There's a lot of guys that get drafted to situations where it's not that great. Jane Daniels is winning in Washington. Who's won in Washington in recent years? You can't win in Washington. Jaden Daniels is doing that, right? Like it's tough to do. At a certain point, you can't continue to make excuses for Justin Fields every single year, although we are saying that he has statistically improved from one year to the next. I always joke, well, he's better than he was last year. Well, I always joke, I'm a very short individual. I'm 5'6", if I'm being, whatever. I'll make me a little tall. I'm 5'7". And let's say I come into work tomorrow and I'm 5'8". I might be taller than I was yesterday, but I'm not tall. So just because you're better than you were last year doesn't make you good. I don't know what the Steelers are going to do at this point with Justin Fields. I think it is telling that they have not come out and officially named him the starting quarterback, right? Like has officially given him that title. I am curious when we see Russell Wilson come back, exactly what they do in that situation. So, Jacob, you threw this out earlier today, buy or sell, that when Russell Wilson does come back, that the Steelers will open the QB competition up when Russ is healthy. Buy or sell?
I'm buying it, and I think it's foolish. I think you've seen enough out of Justin Fields that you can continue to win with him at quarterback, and I think pulling him out and going back and forth between the two, because what happens when Russ goes in if he doesn't look good? Do you just throw Fields right back in there? I don't think that's a recipe for success with young players. I don't think Russ will handle it well if he gets in to start and then gets pulled out. We've already seen how he handles relationships with teammates and coaches in Denver and even stories about Seattle, and it's not always the best. So I think their course of action right now, their best course of action is to name Justin Fields the starter and rock with him as long as you can until you're out on him giving you the best chance to win and put Russell Wilson in there. But I didn't see anything from Denver, Russell Wilson, that makes me think that he gives them a better chance to win than what we're seeing from Justin Fields right now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I don't think there's a better option as of this very second than Justin Fields.
I do think they will open it up, though.
Sure, 100%. Russell Wilson, I don't think is as bad as many portrayed him to be in Denver. I also don't think he was given maybe a fair shot, given the coaching situation there. Do I think that he could win more games than Justin Fields in Pittsburgh? Maybe, but at the end of the day, when your quarterback's 3-2, despite your play on the field, I mean, you just got to roll with the hand that's winning games. And until it gets bad, until they lose several in a row, several more in a row, it's going to be Justin Fields' show. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback. If I was a franchise and Justin Fields is my starting quarterback, I wouldn't feel good about it.
Top 20?
Top 20? I feel like I could find 20 better quarterbacks. I don't know. I'll say top 20 because off the top of my head, I can't name 20 better quarterbacks. But it's just not a good quarterback situation right now in Pittsburgh. If I were a Pittsburgh fan, probably in a couple weeks I'll call for Russell Wilson to be the starter.
The reason why I asked top 20 is because of your consistent take with the Bengals, that the Bengals defense just needs to be right about top 20 to be okay. They don't need to be the best because the offense is so good. Is the defense in Pittsburgh good enough that a top 20 quarterback play in Justin Fields can be enough to win some games?
I think it's a little bit different, though.
I know it is.
I think it's different on the offensive side, man. I think if you can't score points consistently, it's just not the same as your defense being really good. It's two different things, comparing apples to oranges. So, no, I don't think if you're top 20, you're good enough. I just don't.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting, too, I look at Pittsburgh right now. Like, they won their first three. They're 3-0, and it was kind of hard to argue, like, you know, if Russell Wilson comes back and they're 3-0, no, you don't mess with the winning mojo right there, right? But they've lost back-to-back. You know, you lose to the Colts, you lose to the Cowboys the way they did on Sunday night. I mean, that was a battle of two offenses. And, Dak is paid $60 million. Obviously, I think that more attention should be paid attention to how average to below average to struggle some that offense is in Dallas right now. But the Steelers as well. Like, again, I just think Justin Fields gets a lot of passes constantly. And I just don't – I mean, that's the guy right there that it's like, okay, we're watching – if Dak's getting ripped through the media for how poor he looked that night, Justin Fields didn't look any better, and yet we're talking about how good Pittsburgh is with him at quarterback. I just don't see it for me, from my perspective. But here's the thing. If they lose to if they lose to the Las Vegas Raiders, my apologies. They have the Raiders – yeah, they have the Raiders coming up, and then the Jets after that with the Giants. Like, if they're below 500 and you get to the Commanders on November 10th, that's the end of the easy part of the schedule, right? Like, that's the easy front half. If you're below 500 before you get to the gauntlet on the back, I think that they have to make some kind of move just to spark some kind of life into that offense if it exists at all with Russell Wilson. I think that they have to find out. You brought Russell in to be the starter. Justin Fields was just one of those where there was an opportunity there to get him for super cheap, and they did. He started because of the injury to Russell Wilson, and I don't think they're good enough. Right now, this is a 3-2 team that could be 3-3 at the end of this week. They are not a good enough team that you can look at an average quarterback in Justin Fields and say, oh, your job is 1,000,000% safe. I think they will open it up. I think there's a good chance Russell Wilson does make a start soon for the Steelers once he comes back. The other thing that they could do, I mean, there really wasn't a lot of QB opportunities in the league when you kind of made the scope around, but New Orleans becomes kind of interesting. If you're the Steelers, how desperate are the Saints to kind of get the train back on the tracks? Do you make a move like that? Is it too little, too late? What do you think about the Saints potentially kicking the tires on making a move to acquire Russell Wilson for the Steelers if that opportunity presents itself?
Give me the other one. please give me the other one. Give me Justin Fields to New Orleans. Give me Justin Fields and Chris Olave in the same offense like they were before at Ohio State. That would be incredible to watch. Incredible to watch. The Saints were one of my dream teams for Fields when he was coming out. I think that would be perfect with him and Clint Kubiak and the weapons that they have and a budding offensive line. I would love to see Justin Fields in New Orleans. I don't think Russell Wilson's good enough to raise the floor of really any team in the league, but I would love to see Justin Fields in New Orleans.
I think Russell Wilson could elevate somebody's team in the NFL. I don't think you are completely out on Russell. I've never seen a guy more out on a quarterback than you are with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I just don't think I think he's a bad person who's an average quarterback. So I don't want the cancer in my locker room. When you have players on the team you won a Super Bowl with that can't call your phone because they have to go through your agent to reach you, you're not a guy I want playing quarterback for my football team.
That's fair. That's a fair point. I think Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Justin Fields as of today. But that's just my opinion. I think he could absolutely elevate somebody.
Would you move Fields then?
Yeah, I would.
You can't roster them both.
And here's the thing with Justin Fields, though. If you keep Justin Fields, you're going to have to either be in or out on him at some point. And he's so young that you could be like, oh, well, he could be the starter, and he's just not good enough to be the long-term starter of a franchise. He's just not. We can go back and forth on it. I would take the short-term option with Russell Wilson and go out and draft somebody.
All right, next up, again, buy or sell. And again, Jake, this is another one that you sent over earlier today, but kind of looking at it, I'll go ahead and I'll jump into this one. But buy or sell, Deshaun Watson being benched by week 9. Buy or sell?
I'm going to sell it because at this point I don't think Stefanski's allowed to. I said this when we talked about the coaching hot seats. I don't think Kevin Stefanski is allowed to bench Deshaun Watson right now, or I think it would have been done before. I'm selling this, though I think Deshaun Watson should have been benched weeks ago.
I don't know if he should have been already benched, like Jacob just said. So I think you have to ride with him. You're paying him so much money that it's almost I'm trying to find a comparison. I'm trying to find a comparison, and I'm struggling right now. But if you have that much money on the line, it's almost like just go out there and just do something. Just try. We're giving you all this money. I'm not going to pay you to just sit. And it might be just a spite thing. And if that's the case, I don't know what to say. It's the worst. It's the worst trade. It's the worst move in the history of the NFL, maybe in professional sports. They're experiencing it right now in Cleveland. If you're thinking of giving your team a chance to win, you go with Jameis Winston. If you're thinking of, I have to pay this quarterback, so we're all just going to sit here and suffer, then you have to ride with Deshaun Watson. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to make everybody else suffer while you pay your quarterback hundreds of millions of dollars.
So the week 9, again, buy or sell, Deshaun Watson being benched by at least week 9. We're obviously heading into week 6. It is week 6. So the next 4 games for the Browns include their at Philadelphia this coming up weekend, and then you have the Bengals, after that, and then the Ravens and the Chargers. I mean, at this point, I know Bengals fans don't feel confident about their team picking up wins right now, but even with I just can't see Cleveland even going up against a bad defense right now, being able to muster up enough points to outscore Joe Burrow and that offense, putting up 30. I just watched Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback in Washington Commanders team, put up 30-plus points on them. And I know Washington's explosive offensively, but they put up 30 with the Browns forcing turnovers. The Browns were forcing turnovers. They were actually getting to Jaden Daniels, and he was still completing passes, still making big plays on the ground. The problem is, when this team, they've yet to score over 20 points at this point of the season, is just absolutely insane. I know they have key guys out. Let's not act like you don't have weapons. You have Amari Cooper. You have Jerry Jeudy. You have guys that are able to catch the football. They're just not doing it. I think that there's problems that go beyond just quarterback right now, but I think they're quarterback related. I think this team, if you're confident in your quarterback, you're confident as a football team. And this team's clearly not confident in their quarterback. When Joe Flacco took over last year, I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite. I wasn't like super jacked that Joe Flacco had come to Cleveland. I was like, all right, well, if we're putting our hopes in Joe Flacco's hands, I guess this season's over to begin with. But then all of a sudden they take off, and it was one of the most exciting months of football they were the biggest story in football for that month's time. I mean, they're putting up 30-plus points a game. The defense remained number one despite losing some key pieces at key position groups. They were getting to the quarterback, forcing turnovers, putting up 30 points a game, and they were doing this without Nick Chubb. They were doing this with the banged-up offensive line and defense, and they just kept rolling. But when you have confidence in the quarterback, it bleeds through the rest of the team. If they clearly don't have confidence in Deshaun Watson, he doesn't have confidence in himself. There's obviously a gap between him and the coaching staff, and the front office wants him to keep starting. I don't think Kevin Stefanski does. I agree with you guys on that. The bottom line is this is Cleveland. This is what happens. I think he's still starting by week 9. I don't know how many wins they're going to have between now and then. Not many. But regardless, as long as he is healthy, I think he will be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And then you got to wonder, too, could he put the Browns out of their misery? Could Deshaun Watson just say, get me the hell out of here? Could he go to the front office and say, get me out of here? I don't know what the market for him would be. I'm not saying it would be a market at all or anyone would give up anything of significance to get him. But if you can get a 6th or a 7th round pick for him, and some team's willing to take on that contract or something crazy, I don't know. There's crazier things that have happened, but I could see him playing hardball and saying, get me out of here. I don't want to play here anymore. Maybe he puts them out of their misery. I still think he's starting by week 9, barring any injury.
I don't think there is. I think that would be the craziest thing of all time. There's no team that could possibly want to be associated with Deshaun Watson at this point. There can't be another option. Unless he's talking about playing in the CFL or the XFL or whatever that's called now. There is no NFL franchise that would take Deshaun Watson. Not for the value that he clearly thinks he has, and certainly not for the person that he is, which unfortunately is we all know who he is. So if I were an NFL franchise, he would be kryptonite. I would stay so far away from him that I wouldn't let him even have a meeting. Don't even come to the city.
If he demanded a trade, demanded a trade, I think there would be teams interested. I think Cleveland's going to have to eat the money no matter what, right? If he's on the roster and he's not performing, they're eating that money. So if it means getting him off the roster just to free up that, okay, he's gone, let's move on now. If you're going to have to pay that money, him being off the roster is as valuable as anything. And if that means still having to eat the majority, if not all of that contract, I do think teams would take a flyer out on him. He's still in his 20s. He's shown he could be an elite quarterback in the past. And there's going to be a lot of teams that say, maybe we can do something with him, because they'll look at it as, well, it's Cleveland. Of course it didn't work there. We can work our magic with them. I disagree with you. And we've seen, by the way, teams, they deal with bad people all the time. They deal with bad people all the time. If they feel that there's a chance you can go in and help them win football games, they'll do it. And I still think there would be a market for him. I don't think teams are lining up for him. But this idea that he would just vanish and never take another snap in the NFL again, I disagree with that. I don't think that's the case.
I don't think he's a good quarterback. And that's despite my personal issues with him, I think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's been statistically one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL this season.
I think he's playing bad. He's not a bad quarterback. He's proven he's not a bad quarterback.
But it's been 3 years.
Yeah, I think at this point he is a bad quarterback.
It's been 3 years. It's
still in his 20s.
Yeah,
in his 20s, still you wouldn't take a flyer on him. And I'm not saying you guys are wrong. Look, he's statistically horrible. I'm not arguing with you like that.
Absolutely not. If I was an NFL franchise, how do you get your fans excited for that move? How do you get people to buy that jersey? I get the move. Like you say all the time, I get the move at the time. I get that. I don't get this. If there was a team out there that would just take him and be like, yeah, we believe in this guy, that's wrong. There can't be an NFL franchise that operates that way. The only way anybody would ever take him is if they're getting first-round draft picks along with him, and they will eat the money.
Yeah. They're not getting first-round draft picks. Cleveland's best way to get out of this, and I've said this before, you got to pay him no matter what. Use that first-round draft pick, draft a quarterback, drop him behind, hopefully, that offensive line if it gets healthy. And they're going to have to rebuild the left side of that line, no doubt. But you put him out there. Maybe you bring Nick Chubb back again. I don't know. There's a way out that they could still try to find a way to win through this. The Broncos are winning games right now, and they have 76 mil dead cap that they're fighting up against, and they're still winning football games because they have a rookie quarterback that's starting to develop, into a winning quarterback. So there's a way out. I don't think Cleveland's as far out of this as everyone thinks. I think they're closer to getting out of this than people think. The other thing is, too, they have a rich owner that can roll over a lot of money to offset some of this. Will they have to eat it later? Yes. But in the meantime, there's a way to salvage some of this But if they move on from Stefanski or he leaves and they feel they have to blow it all up, oh well. If you want me to say, oh man, I'm pissed that they blew it all up, I'm happy they at least gave it a shot. They went out to go get a quarterback. They went out to go get at the time, a great quarterback. I pulled this up just because I was curious, kind of the teams that were kind of in the mix to go acquire Deshaun Watson at the time. The teams that went to go acquire Deshaun Watson at the time: the Atlanta Falcons, the New Orleans Saints, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Carolina Panthers, the Cleveland Browns. There was a lot more teams than that. Those were the finalists to acquire him. That was the list of teams that he was willing to at least go to. Okay. With that being said, look at the teams that still don't have comfortable quarterback situations. New Orleans Saints, they had to go for Derek Carr just to try to salvage their quarterback situation there. Pittsburgh still doesn't have a quarterback. The Falcons, they had to go spend a lot of money to get a Kirk Cousins, and that might work out. But overall, look how many years ago it was that Cleveland got him. Every team that was in position to get a quarterback that was trying to get him, they didn't get him, and they still haven't figured out their quarterback situation since. It's tough to get a quarterback in this league. And at that time, Deshaun Watson, from a talent perspective, there was no better option to go get than that one. Cleveland did it. It didn't work, but I don't blame them one damn bit. And if they can go back and do it again, not knowing what we know now, I'll do it all over again. The only way to win in this league is with an elite quarterback. You can win games. You could be a cute little story like Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You could be all cute and get people interested like the Minnesota Vikings, but those teams ain't winning blank. Fill in the blank with whatever non-FCC approved word you can. They're not winning anything. They're going to win games, but overall they're not going to accomplish what they ultimately want to. The Cleveland Browns went after a quarterback that with that defense, O-line, run game, if it's that Deshaun Watson that's from Houston, that Cleveland team's a problem. They have a lot more problems now because it didn't work. But overall, they made an effort to go improve their quarterback situation. Pittsburgh won't do it, and look, they're just running in place. I have no problem with what Cleveland did years ago. It just sucks it didn't work out. That's where I stand with that, as far as that's concerned.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
And just like that, we're out of time.
I figured we were nearing the end.
I had to have been.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, the disdain that Elliott has. I just, it is what it is. I don't
have disdain. I don't think the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, you do.
No, I don't.
We talk about a lot of bad quarterbacks. That's your whole.
Well, he's the only bad quarterback that's also a bad person.
He's there's nothing redeemable about him. That's I don't think the Cleveland Browns are out of it at all. You said people are writing off because their quarterback right now is the worst quarterback in the NFL. He is the worst active quarterback starting in the NFL statistically.
Fighting the Browns off
Terrible.
Because their O-line stinks, receivers can't catch balls, and the defense is not playing the way that
this
they're
is
supposed
Deshaun
to.
Watson's fault.
I also think that there is something to going to work every day and having your leader be Deshaun Watson and maybe not getting up for that. I do think that plays a part into it. I see Jameis Winston giving more pregame speeches than Deshaun on Twitter all the time.
Joe Burrow needs to do more so the defense feels like coming to work to perform for him then, apparently, based on that logic.
But that you mentioned the offensive side of the football. Those are offensive things.
I know. And it's offensive.
I'm just saying those are offensive sides of the ball there. I'm just saying if you made the move to Jameis Winston tomorrow, Browns might make the playoffs. You stay with Deshaun Watson, we all know what we got here.
I'm here to tell you, as much as you'd like that to be true, the Browns do not make the playoffs with Jameis Winston because the problems are beyond just the quarterback at this point. But it would help. They might win a couple more games than they would with Deshaun the full way.
It would be much more fun to watch if you were a fan.
That's true.
Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. That wraps it up for us on radio. We got the Justin Kinner Show coming up next here on 1410 ESPN Radio.